Greetings and salutations, and welcome to this episode of Playwright Spotlight. Before we begin, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment down below, and share this channel with a friend. If you're listening to us on your favorite podcast platform, be sure to leave a 5-star review and subscribe to the channel. My guest today is a multi-award winning Los Angeles-based playwright whose plays have been produced nationally and internationally. Her play Exit Wounds was gold medalist for the Moss Hart and Kitty Carlisle New Play Initiative and will be receiving its world premiere at International City Theater in Long Beach, California on August 25th. Her other plays include Unemployed Elephants, A Love Story, Please Don't Ask About Beckett, All-American Girl, Closely Related Keys, and Behind the Gates, amongst many, many others. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Wendy Graf.
Hello.
Hi. Thanks for coming on and doing this.
Oh, I'm happy to be here.
Wonderful. To start, so the one thing I noticed, and forgive me if I'm wrong on this, you received the award for Exit Wounds in 2019.
Yes.
Correct. Okay. And here we are, we're in 2023. And so what was the process leading up to this? If you won the award, obviously it's a good play, but why has it taken 4 years? What was the process, and has anything changed in the piece since winning that award?
Well, there was a little thing called COVID.
Oh yes, that's right. That might do it.
After
I like to forget that. I like to forget and think that thing never happened.
After I won the award, the play was optioned by a New York producer, and I thought, this is it. You know, we're on our way. And we were talking, we talked about actors, and he talked about, should we go to the Goodman first and then we'll bring it to New York and all this. And, that takes a while. It was starting to be sent out, and it was starting to be, talked about and everything. And then there was a little thing called COVID. And then, now I still continued to work with him. He became a great friend. He's Los Angeles based right now, and he became a great friend. And during COVID, he said to me, why don't you write it into a screenplay? You might learn something. It might inform you on something. So I did. And I worked on it, and it was great to work on stuff, and it was great to revisit it. And we had a couple of readings and everything. And then I took some of the things that I discovered and I put them into the script. So let's see, now we're up to 2021, the end of 2021, when my play Closely Related Keys was done at ICT. It was their first production back after COVID. And I got to be friendly with the artistic director, and I really loved her, and I really loved working there and everything. And in 2022, actually in 20 years was the first year I never had a production.
Wow.
Yeah. So things were like a little depressing in 2022, except for there was a very big change in the theater, as you probably know, in 2022. There was a big change in the sensibilities. It was a big change in the type of material that theaters were looking for. Artistic directors who I had relationships with left or were replaced or retired. And, as you know, things changed dramatically.
Sure.
So I didn't really get any action in the first half of 2022, to start to send out Exit Wounds again. And then I approached Karen, and I said, the artistic director, and I said, I have this play, blah, 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 blah. And also one of the stage managers, and also Lucy, said to Karen, you should read her play, Exit Wounds. So I she read it, and I guess good things come to those who wait. Sure. Because I'm thrilled to death with this production, and I'm thrilled to death with her as a director because she's so wonderful, and I love the cast, and it's a wonderful theater, and I'm really excited. And like I said, I guess the time was right. Now the
Sure.
time is right for it. And interestingly enough, I did go to the first table read. I don't go after that, but I went to the first table read, and the stuff that I had put in from the screenplay, I turned to her and I said, let's cut that out. And she said, that's exactly what I was going to say.
Do you think that real quick, let me get this out before, just so people know the context or the reference. So you mentioned Lucy Pollock, who is your publicist. So just in case there are playwrights that are listening to this, if you're looking for a publicist, Lucy Pollock,
the best.
So keep that in mind if you guys are looking for that, if you get to that place, or if you need to know publicists in that regard. So, and then of course I was going to, as soon as I'm like, let me get this out first. And then, so did you cut it out because you realized that it works for the screenplay, but it doesn't work for the stage? Or did you just realize that it just doesn't work?
Both. Well, no, I realized we realized it stopped the action. Like when you're doing a play, I always think of my plays as you're getting on the train. And once you're on that train, the train's left the station, and I don't want it to make any stops in some weird town, I mean, I don't even write intermissions.
Okay.
But so it was kind of like it stopped the action, and it worked with the screenplay when you had opened it up and everything, but it just didn't work with the play. It stopped the action. I could tell us immediately. And that's why the thing about playwriting that's so important, and that I tell people when they ask me, is you have to hear it. You can't read it. It doesn't make any sense to read a play. I was away at a family function a week ago, and I have a young niece who's like 21, and she's interested in the theater and everything. And she said, could you give me a list of some plays that I should read? And, as soon as I started making the list, I said, well, wait a minute. I said, I of course started with Angels in America. And I said, you won't get it if you read it first. Here, you can see on HBO, you can see the Mike Nichols production. I mean, plays are meant to be heard. They're not meant to be read. And that's all, circling back into like, what's my process? That's my process. It has to be heard every step of the way.
So you'll get through a first draft and then do a table read. Is that how it works? Or do you go back through it after your first draft and then rework some stuff? Or
no, I used to, when I was first starting out, or then I'd bring in scenes or things like that to writing groups. What I found in my in the last, say, 8 years, 10 years or so, when I've been working on something, what I've done is I do my first draft. I mean, I kind of read it through. Yes, of course I do, because I believe in the vomited out first draft. Just get it all out there, throw everything up against the wall, and then you're going to go back. I liken a play to like you have a block of marble, and inside that marble is a statue. And you chip away and you chip away and you chip away till you find the statue. And that's how I write a play. So what I've been doing in the last few years as I've become, more seasoned and more intuitive about what works and what doesn't, is that what I'll usually do is I'll get a bunch of actors, and I'll get maybe 3 or 4 of my go-to playwright friends, and I'll have them over for lunch, and I'll give them lunch, and we'll read the play around the dining room table. And, that's my first step. And then what do you guys think?
Okay. So you're taking your feedback from actors.
No, 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 no. When I say that I have my go-to friends, they're all writers
Got it. Understood. Okay.
or
Okay. I thought it was just
directors.
getting the friends together to perform for you and then
No,
getting
no,
their
no,
feedback.
no,
Okay.
no, no. I'm not interested in the performance. I'm interested in hearing it. And so many times actors say in a first or an early reading, what do you want me to do? And I say, I don't want you to do anything. I want to see how you respond to what's on the page. So I can see what's on the page and what's not on the page.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I'm going to try something real quick just in case, because I got a little bit of a blur on from you on my end. Can you do me a huge favor? Do you mind turning off any other apps that you might or programs that you may have going on right now? Just like that won't interfere with with
everything else is out.
All right, great. Just making sure. Just making sure. I just wanted to try and get you a little unblurred. It got blurry since from when we first started than when we did. So there we go. That looks a little bit better. All right, no worries. Okay, so the question I have, so you had this long stint of success, and I'm not going to say that that tapered off or that you're not successful anymore by any means. But what's the secret to that? I think there's tons of playwrights that don't have that longevity under their belt like you do. So do you credit that to anything in particular? Is there
I think
there things that you do from a marketing standpoint?
Well, I think one of the things is I'm unbelievably, you have to be resilient and you have to be proactive. And I had a lot of stories in me that I wanted to tell. My mentor was the late Gordon Davidson. And I learned everything from him about how to develop and produce a play. And he always said to me, you are a storyteller. And so I've always had a lot of stories I wanted to tell. I kind of had to follow my own path. What you can't do is compare yourself to anybody else or anybody else's path. And I think that's where so many writers and actors, get stuck, because everybody's path is different and everybody has different strengths and everybody appeals to a different audience. And you can go ahead and you can submit to all these places and you can go, why did she get it and I didn't get it, and all that. But you've just you've just got to move on. Like Stephen Sondheim said in Sunday in the Park with George, move on. Anything you do, let it come from you, then it will be new. And you just have to move on, and you have to develop your contacts and the people you like working with. And early on in my career, what was so helpful was to belong to theater companies. And, then this becomes your community. And then when you say, hey, I got a new play, can we do a reading? And that's how mostly I've gotten things produced, is that I've had readings at places, and a lot of times I would do, by the time I got to that spot in the development where it was ready to do a public reading, I would invite all the artistic directors, and then some of them would say, hey, I really like this play, can we talk?
Interesting.
And that kind of thing. Yeah. You got to develop relationships, and the relationships and the contacts. And I've made contacts, all over the country and in Canada. I've had a number of plays produced in Canada. And because people, if you work well with people and they like your script and it's a success, they're always open to, hey, I got a new script. Can I send it to you? See what you think?
So are you expanding when you would invite artistic directors, are you throwing that net outside of your local, like even as far up as Canada?
Well, okay, so it's two different things. If you're having a Sunday night reading in North Hollywood, you can't invite anybody in Canada. So it's local people. What I do with the non-local people is like I have a relationship with Bloomington Playwrights, and I did a reading for them of a play of mine in 2010, and they did the production in 2018.
Wow. Okay. Wow. Okay.
I mean, you just stay on them. Hi, another thing I do is, I send out emails of like, I have this new production and I hope that it sounds interesting. And then so many times people will get back to me and say, hey, send me the play. I'd like to read it. Sometimes they read it and, you don't hear from them, or sometimes they say, yeah, and sometimes they say, this is a little interesting. Can we talk some more? And all that. You have to stay at it as long. I mean, I hate the business of the business. I would be very happy to sit in my pajamas in my house and sit in front of the computer and never talk to anybody.
Sure.
But you've just got to do it. And the other thing that's the other person who's been really just amazingly helpful in my career is Lucy Pollock, because I met her for the first time on a play of mine in 2010. And I've tried to have her on everything I've done in town since. In fact, when the theater didn't have a regular person, I said, hey, can we use Lucy Pollock? And she built relationships with me with, how she called you, and with reviewers and critics, and, so they all know me. And then when they go to review me, they can review me in the lens of my entire career, not just this one play.
Sure. Yeah. I think with some beginning playwrights and whatnot, they think that they got to start off with these huge markets, and that's the only way that they're successful, whether that's Los Angeles or Chicago or New York. What's your advice to them, or what do you say to that? As far as the smaller markets like Long Beach, even,
Well, I don't consider it a small market because it's a big theater. It's a big regional theater. They need to get into a playwrights group, a theater group. They need to find a community, and then they've got to start small. You can't start big. They're not going to look at your script from the Goodman. I mean, okay, now I'm not talking about if you're a Juilliard MFA graduate or an NYU MFA graduate, totally different thing. That was never my experience. I was never in that loop. And, I had to do it a completely different way. You need to start small. You need to learn about finding a play and the development of a play. I mean, I don't know what they think. Okay, now it's done. I mean, it's never done.
Right.
When I'm developing a play, I rewrite all the way up through opening night. And sometimes I've rewritten once the production opened, when I said, God, every night, this is not landing. Let's just cut it. And then there's some directors who say, no, I already did the light plot. You're like, what are we doing here? Right. That was Gordon Davidson. He had me rewriting every single day of the 6-week run. And then after that, for like 3 years, I had like 100 icons on my computer of that particular play. And, they did like 5 nights of previews, and every night they did a different ending. I mean, it's horrifyingly scary, but you got to learn. You got to learn. You got to learn how to. You got to learn how to do this. And then you have, okay, so here you have this new playwright, and he has his play, and he does a reading in the Westfest, reading festival, or the this or that reading festival. And then he gets a lot of notes, and then you freak out. Oh my God, the whole play is apart. It doesn't work anymore. It's all over the floor. It's broken. I'll never get it back again. I mean, that's how I used to be, until I did it enough times that I knew, like, all right, relax, breathe. It'll come to you. It may take a day or two, but it will be better. And then you also have to bring in the scenes so you can hear them. Like, I've had directors say to me, we need to rewrite blah, blah, blah scene. And I'd say, okay, I'm going to bring it in on Thursday, and I'm going to hear it. And I want to hear the old one, and then I want to hear the new one, and I'll just give it to the actors. And, it's a collaborative art. You can't do this on your own. And if you have smart actors and a smart director, it's just going to be so much better when you collaborate, if you listen to them. And I've had somebody tell me, a colleague told me, nobody knows this character better than the actor who's playing it. Mm. So if they say to me, this doesn't feel right. Now, if they say that in the first week, I'm not there, because I'm never there in the first week, because they all say that in the first week. And, they need to have time to come back around again to it,
Sure.
But playwriting is a collaborative art. I won't say playwriting is the collaborative art, but play production is a collaborative art.
Did you find that all those times that you were doing those rewrites, or you were asked to do those rewrites, that the director, whoever was making those requests, was correct? Did it always turn out to be for the best, or did they realize, all right, you're right, I was wrong, let's go back to how it was?
Everything. And sometimes I had to say to them, I'm sorry. This goes against my gut, which was a lot easier at this point in my career than when I was first starting out. My first really professional production, I was not allowed into the rehearsals. The director called me every day and said, okay, let's go through the script, cut this, cut that, change this, change that. And I had no idea until, I read the Dramatists Guild Bill of Rights, and they can't do that. And now I can say, sorry, you can't do that.
Sure.
But I didn't know the difference, and it was miserable. It was just miserable.
Sure.
Luckily, the next production wasn't like that, so I was like, okay, this is how it's supposed to be. But sometimes I say to the director, when I bring it in, or the actors, you know what, you guys are right. Okay, let's fix it this way. Or sometimes I'll say, let's look under the note, and let's examine this just a little bit more, and then we kind of maybe work it out together, or I make a suggestion. Sometimes I have to say, I'm sorry, it doesn't work for me. It's not my play. It's not in my gut. I'm going to have to ask you to do it as written. And I don't do that much. I don't do that a lot. I mean, I'm very, I think the reason that a lot of people have wanted to work with me, a lot of directors, that, I'm not like, this is the words and don't change anything. I find with a lot of directors, they're scared. They're scared. I mean, especially when it's a new play and a new production, and they want to make good. And, they're scared. And especially, I've written a lot of plays that are very dangerous. and provocative. Like my play, All-American Girl. It was about how does an all-American girl become a terrorist and blow things up. And the director, and I love her. I worked with her before on another play, but she was scared on this play, you know, and there was like a lot of like, I don't know. And, you know, the actress was very involved, you know, and then sometimes it does start to get a little muddy. And then I have to remember she's scared too. And I have to instill, you know what you're doing, you know this, you've got this, you know, we've got to make our bold choices and we've got to stand by our choices, and everybody isn't going to love this play. That's not what I do.
Right.
I'm going to have controversy, and I'm going to have people. I mean, I've had terrible reviews and I've had glorious reviews, you know, and you can't write for an audience. You can't write for what's a la mode, so to speak, you know.
Sure.
Your writing has to come from your heart, and you have to stand by it. And if you don't, it's not going to work.
Have you ever backed down in that regard as far as subject matter goes, or you just roll your dice, take your chances, and take the hits as they come? And then how do you deal with those hits when they do come?
Have I ever said, okay, I'll change it for the audience and all that?
Yeah, or for anybody who's asking, because it's too uncomfortable for them.
Okay, well, for example, I've had a theaters, one of my plays, I had a theater say to me, we'd really like to do it, but we need to change the ending because my subscribers just won't stand for it. And I said to them, if you like a painting, you buy it. You don't tell the painter you don't tell the artist to change the colors to match your living room. Sorry, I can't do it.
That's brilliant.
I mean, I've had to pull the plug twice, and it kills you to pull the plug. And one of them was going to be my New York debut. And it was, but sometimes you just have to. So.
And then, so with those, I mean, so were there any instances where there was worry that the subject matter was going to be off, that the subscribers weren't going to take it, or were any of these were any of these warnings ever substantiated to where it turned out to be were they always unwarranted? Like
no, I'll tell you how. One time I listened to the director and I listened to the actors, and they went off on a tangent, and they said, we need all this, you know, we need this whole plot line. And I was like, really? And they were like, yeah, we really do, and blah, 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 blah. So I rewrote this whole plot line and everything. And every review, God damn it, said it was, you know, superfluous. And I shouldn't have had that plot line and everything. And then I was like, fuck, you know.
Sure.
But luckily, I was able to do the play again, and I was able to put it back to where I wanted it to be back.
So the one who was worried about their subscribers not liking the end, did that production go up or not? No.
I said
that's the one you pulled the plug on.
Right.
Okay.
No, that's not the one I pulled the plug on. He said, I like your play, I'd like to produce it, but you need to change the ending.
Got it.
I've had it a lot of times on that play. It's a play that asks very hard questions about Israel.
Fair enough. And so and that play's been produced, yes?
Yes, that play's been produced twice. Now it's been asked a bunch of times. It's asked me, theaters have asked me to do the play, but to change the ending. And I said, no, I'm sorry, I just can't. I said, I can go this far, but I can't do what you're asking me. And then one theater wanted me to take out a whole character. It didn't make any sense. It was crazy. So no, those are the ones that I had to pull the plug on. I had to pull the plug on one of them because the artistic director had come in and he was in there every day. I liked the director. I liked the actors. I was very happy with them. And he came in every day and he wanted me to change this and he wanted me to change that. And he wanted me to recast. He didn't like how it was cast, blah, 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 blah. And finally I said, you know what? I can't do this. I'm sorry. I just can't do this. I have a pit in my stomach every single day. It's not fun. It's not good. We're not doing our best work. And I'm sorry.
Wow. Good for you. Out of those two productions with All American Girl.
No, I only had one production of All American Girl.
Oh, one. Okay. What was the response from the audience? Did it get the controversial response that everybody was so worried about, or was the audience accepting of it?
There's nothing better than an audience with a controversial response. I had talkbacks where people were screaming at each other. I had people following me out of the theater in the street, like that. What could be better? It's fabulous.
I guarantee they were going home talking about it.
Right. They're talking about it.
But I mean, isn't that what this is all about? Isn't that what theater is all about? Is asking questions and forcing discussions?
Absolutely.
Maybe not forcing, but
my goal is always to end with a question rather than an answer. I end with a question and then go across the street and have a drink and argue it out with your friends. I'm not going to give you an answer. You come up with your own answer. And that's what art's about.
What does that look like on the page? Obviously there's a conclusion. You're not leaving it open-ended. That's not what asking a question means. So what does that look like on the page? How are you asking a question at the end without leaving it an open ending? If that makes sense.
I just don't tie it up with a bow. Like, for example, at the end of Exit Wounds, well, maybe I shouldn't use Exit Wounds again.
Yeah, I was going to say, oh, don't give the ending away on that one.
Okay, at the end of my play, Closely Related Keys, these two sisters who have been damaged in their own way, who never knew about each other, finally meet in a meeting place. And, they say, oh, look, it's under construction. And they say, like we are. And let me see how the ending goes. Something about, but at least we're together. Our mothers would have liked that. And that's the best we can do right now. So you don't know, are they going to be going to Thanksgiving dinner together and all that kind of thing? We don't know. Is she ever going to find her husband in the rubble of war? We don't know. But we know that the two sisters have made steps towards healing and healing from each other. So does that make any sense?
Sure. Why playwriting? What got you into this
genre
domain?
I wanted to be an actress, and I was not a very good actress, but okay. Anyway, so I used to write, like in high school and stuff. I used to write, and I used to love like the English classes where you read the book and you dissected the characters and the motives and the themes and all that kind of stuff. I always loved all that. Mm-hmm. And I was in television. I was like I said, I wanted to be an actress. I belonged to a theater company. I started writing little things for myself to do, little 10-minute things and all of that. And there was an executive producer of a very popular TV show then at that time, and he brought a big stack of scripts, and he said, read these and write a spec script, and you'll make $1 million in television. So, and I also did stand-up and wrote the stand-up. Trust me, I would have to have so many drinks at this point. I can't even believe that I used to do it. I worked every Saturday night at 11:30 at the Comedy Store. Wow. There was usually 5 people in the audience, and one of them was my husband. But so I had a career in television, and I did a lot of stuff. I did a lot of work in television. And then when I got pregnant with my second child, that career was kind of over. And I'm not even going to go into all that. But sure. Then I wrote screenplays for like 2 years that didn't sell. And it was very frustrating. And then I became a private investigator.
Oh, wow.
Yes, because I worked on Murder, She Wrote. I wrote Murder, She Wrote scripts. And my husband's an attorney. And he said to me, I said, I got to get out of the business. And he said, God, my PI is just lousy. And I said, I can do that. And I didn't realize it was like completely illegal and fruit from the poisonous tree and all that. Anyway, I ended up, I didn't want to go back to college at this point. I ended up going to Nick Harris Detective Academy. And that was the most fun thing. It was like theater. Being a private investigator is like a theater because you have to, you're different people, you're different characters, you have to interview people, all that. You have to become other people to try to get information out of them, all that. It's like research for a play. Anyway, so I did that for a while. And then my daughter, who was like going into 8th grade at the time, went to Idlewild Arts for the summer. And she came back and wrote and produced and directed her own play at school. And I thought, I got to get back to this. So in 2000, I started writing plays again. And the rest is history. I love it. I love it. Playwriting's a dialogue-driven medium. I was not good at screenwriting. That's a visual-driven medium. And I didn't want to write a book. I didn't want to just be a narrative writer. And people always told me that my dialogue was so good and really sounded like real people and everything. So I love it.
How do you do that? What makes realistic dialogue?
I listen. I'm a listener and I'm a watcher. And I mean, even like if we're out at breakfast, like we were out at breakfast this morning and there was this long table and it was somebody's birthday, but there was so many different people. And I started to say to my husband, how do all those people what do they all have in common? How do they all get together? And the guy was like, with the two little kids, oh, I made a bracelet for you that's really special. And I'm like watching, oh, did you see the bracelet and everything? I mean, and this is what I've done a lot of times. A lot of my plays have come out of my travels. And I like to travel to exotic places. And I have the one play that came out of my trip to Israel. And I had another play that came out of my trip to India. And Unemployed Elephants, a love story, came out of my trip to Myanmar, which is probably the most hideous destination that you can even possibly think of. So I always watch the people and I'm like, God, what's their story? What do you think? Do you think that's her ex-husband? They're not wearing a ring, but they seem, I like try to make up the story and figure out what they're doing. And I listen to what they say.
What makes good dialogue?
It's not writerly, it's not, it sounds like real people. That was one of the things Gordon Davidson taught me. He'd always say, mess it up. And what would happen was, I'd take these beautifully written paragraphs, and he'd go, mess it up. And I said, what do you mean? He says, that's not how you speak when you speak. Like I'm speaking to you right now and I'm going, or, and then I stop and I think about what I'm going to say. Oh, wait, no, maybe, blah, 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 mess it up. Speak like people really speak. They don't speak like beautiful paragraphs. But you have to be a listener. If you're not a listener, you're not going to know.
And see, let's unpack this a little bit because I go back and forth because I find that. So, do you include the ums and the ers and the
Well, I include a lot of dots.
Okay.
It depends on the character. It depends on if the character is trying to say something that's very hard for them to say. I mean, listen to people who talk to you who are telling you something that's very hard for them to say or to admit or to whatever. They don't just come out and say, and I had an affair with my husband's best friend. And really, it was very confusing. But, you'd be more like, all right, well, I haven't really ever told anybody this. I can't believe I'm telling you this. All right, I mean, don't judge me, but you probably will. But I had an affair with my husband's best friend. It didn't happen. It didn't last for a long time. But okay, see, do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, 100%. And that's why I just wanted, because I mean, sometimes, and I find this with young playwrights as well, they do want it to sound natural and they put the ums and the ers, and I'm like, don't
put too many.
Well, yeah, I get that too, but it's like, the actor is going to come up with those things. If the intention's there and and it's relatable and they'll find ways to insert those hesitations, if you will. What makes bad dialogue? Or did we already answer that question by the examples of good dialogue?
Yeah, we probably answered that. Now, I'm not saying, Shakespeare and you have to do it in an iambic pentameter or it's very, Brecht or, I'm talking about modern drama.
Incomplete sentences, etc.
Wait, I was going to say something else. What was I going to say?
Brechtian.
Oh,
Shakespeare.
I overwrite. And when I start to overwrite, sometimes I'll say the same thing twice, in a line or something like that. And that's where I start cutting, or the actor will say, do I have to say this twice or something like that? So we go with whichever one sounds the best, kind of thing. I feel like I'm lucky that I do overwrite because, believe me, it's so much easier to cut than it is to add or to fill out.
So when you say that you when the overriding you say the same thing twice, is it the same thing twice but just in a different way, and you're not quite sure what to go with? Because I mean, when I do screenplays, I'll get because I'll use Final Draft and I'll play around where it's like I don't know if it's this response or this response, so I'll put both in, and then determine it later on which one works better. Is it kind of like in those regards that you have both, and it's just like, let me hear both, and then I can decide which one I want to go with? Okay.
No, it's in the vomited out draft.
Got it.
Where I just say things more than once.
Fair enough. Fair enough. So what with your locations, because you're writing these exotic places, but what does your setting look like on the page? And is it extravagant? Do you go into detail about these locations and these exotic places, or is it still pretty simple?
It's pretty simple.
Okay.
I find that a lot of stuff when you write it, that and stage directions and all that kind of thing, that's for the reading of it. Like when we were at the table read on Tuesday, I also said to the director, cut out every place I wrote beat. Are you getting echoing from me? I
am not.
Oh, okay. I said, I tend to write beat, pause, ... all that. I said, cut all that out. That's for reading purposes. Or he looks at her askance, or something like that. That's for the person who's reading the play. Once the play gets in the hands of the director and the actors, I say, cut it all out. Don't look at it. I think I remember back when I was writing screenplays that they said, the less, directions, what do you call it in a screenplay, a stage direction, an action, whatever, don't put them in, the director will put them in.
But so do you do that with all of them, or only the ones that are unnecessary? And there's a reason why I ask, and it's just because of a story that I heard, and I'll tell you that story.
Wait, I need a little more clarification.
Well, so if you're going through and you're cutting all the action, all the stage directions, and the reason why I bring this up is I had a playwright who went to see one of his productions, and the director did that exact same thing, cut all the stage directions out, and so the playwright went to see this particular piece. And at the end, the playwright said, what happened to the stabbing?
Oh, no, nothing like that. No. When I say cut out stage, she pauses. She lights another cigarette, that kind of thing. No, not like, she goes and opens the door to him. Oh, that's awful.
Oh, yeah, it was terrible. Yeah. So I find that as well. I find that sometimes when, except for maybe Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, but I find that some younger playwrights as well will include pours a drink and does this, and just like that, you'll find times for that.
Right.
I agree with that, with certain things that, and I'm sure I'm still guilty of it. I'm sure I'll put things in there that contradict my advice when I do workshops and things like that, where it's just like, I should probably take my own advice sometimes. But
who takes their own advice?
Exactly. Are there any, and forgive me, because you've said his name twice, your mentor,
Gordon Davidson. Do you know who he is?
I don't, and I wish I did, because he sounds like a fabulous person who's very knowledgeable.
Gordon Davidson was the artistic director of Center Theater Group for 36 years.
Wow.
He's a Tony Award-winning director. He's a wonderful artistic director. In fact, if you've read any of the recent articles about the fall of the taper, they all reference Gordon, and he brought so many things to Center Theater Group. He brought Angels in America to Broadway. He brought the Shadow Box to Broadway and directed it. He brought the Kentucky Cycle. He did all of August Wilson's plays on the road. I mean, he was just the most wonderful mentor, teacher, director. He was wonderful, absolutely wonderful. His words are in my head every single day, and I miss him terribly. And, it's funny because last 2 summers, I did a page to stage, with young playwrights. And I felt like I was channeling Gordon on anything. I was like, mess it up, and all the things that Gordon used to say to me was, you have to be very careful, and he was like, do not take when you're in production with a play, do not take the scenes and bring them to your writing group. It's between you and the director. It's between you and the production. Don't get all these outside people's opinions. You don't need them. It's between you and the director.
Is that usually just for that particular production, or is that just for that first premiere?
I think it would be a horrible thing to be in production with a director and a theater and a writer, and for me to take a scene and to bring it into my writing group.
No, I understand that part, but do you find that when you say that between you and the director, is that only for the premiere that you would make those changes, or let's say you had a run down the road, 4 productions later, and now you're having a different discussion about that same play? Are you making adjustments to that, or is this like, look, this is it?
Yeah. Sometimes, yeah, absolutely. I mean, the ones that I've done, what I do is when it's a new play and it's in development, I'm there.
Right.
When it's not a new play, I'll come to the table read and to casting if I can. I mean, when it was in, Vancouver, I couldn't do it. I came opening night, but I communicated with the director. There were a couple of things where he said, can we change this line? This line might be a little dated. Could we change it to thus and such? Oh, yeah, sure. Go ahead. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. In those aspects, I get it. I was thinking more like considerably major changes where it's like, oh, this is done. It's published. We're not, we're not going down that road.
No.
Understood. Okay.
Although, what's sort of interesting is, well, for example, Unemployed Elephants, A Love Story is published. And then after it was published during COVID, someone did a Zoom production of it, or a digital production of it. And I sat in on it because it was really interesting to me. Luckily you could, because it was only 2 characters, but it gave me like a really close lens into the 2 characters. And then I thought to myself, gee, I'm sort of sad that it was published, because there's some things that I might have wanted to change. And, I know that like in certain plays, like in Angels in America, after it was published, there was like a bunch of different editions of it that he made changes afterwards, and then they republished it and everything. Well, they weren't so excited to republish Unemployed Elephants, A Love Story, but I think that happens a lot of times, especially if it's an older play, things maybe become dated. I mean, maybe back in my very oldest plays, I used answering machines,
Sure. Well, I mean, I guess if those particular plays are what we'd call timeless, sure, like everything within the dynamics of the play stays the same no matter when it's staged. I can understand that, but I would say that why not keep it in the time that it was written?
Well, I have pretty much. I'm just saying there was
Sure.
a couple of things, like I remember in the Canadian one, there was he says something about one of the characters calls his friend, okay, Kemosabe, and it went up during the time that they were having all these incidents in Canada with the indigenous people and everything. And he said, could we just change the Kemosabe to like, okay, sport? I said, sure, no problem. Go ahead. It's that kind of stuff.
Well, I mean, the indigenous aspect aside, and and sensitivity aspect, I know the reference. I'm just curious how many other people may or may not know. Not to say that Kemosabe is not a legitimate word used in the indigenous communities, but it's kind of specific to a certain
Tonto,
nostalgia for us as far as the Lone Ranger goes. So I can kind of get that as well, where it's like how many people are going to get that if that is where the reference is coming from. So when you did your page to stage, what did you find was a reoccurring trend with young playwrights that you had to kind of break them of? If you found one.
When they were, okay, so the way that it worked was, for the first couple of meetings we met as a group, they pitched their idea, then they, wrote about their characters, all that. And, and then they did this structure thing. And I remember saying to my friend who ran it, I said, I don't know if you want me to be doing this, because I don't write outlines anymore. And he said, you know what? You have it inside of you. You've been doing this for so long, you have a sense of it inside of you. He said, but they don't know, so let them just go ahead and do that. So then we spent like 6 weeks where they had to give me like 20 pages a week. And I told them, just keep moving forward. Don't go back. Don't rewrite. Keep moving forward. Even if a character changes, just write in the margin, okay, the character changed, I'm now going to make him a man, or something like that. So the first kid that I had a really hard time not going back and rewriting. And I told them not to do it. And the point of the whole thing was that they finish a first draft in 4 or 5 weeks, and then they're not supposed to read it. They're not supposed to go over it. And then there's a public reading for it so they can hear what they have. And the night of the public reading, God darn it, if that kid didn't go back and rewrite the whole script. Mm-hmm. And the facilitator said, what did you do? Did you just throw away everything that Wendy told you and tried to help you with? So that's one thing. They've got to get the vomited out draft out. That's the most important thing. Keep moving forward. Don't go back and rewrite. Then you need to hear it. There's a wonderful exercise called the 48-hour exercise. And when I was in the playwrights group over at Pacific Resident Theater, we did this all the time. And I mean, I got 3 plays out of it. You pick an envelope and it has a prompt. I'll show you this was my prompt for Unemployed Elephants, a love story. And you write to everybody, okay, my 48 hours is starting, and you keep writing. You just write over the course of 48 hours. You don't go back. You don't edit. You can even say something happens here, but I'm not even sure what it is, and all that. And then when it's over, you read it aloud. But these
real quick, I'm sorry. What is that prompt for those of us, for those of the that might just be listening and not watching?
Oh, it was a picture of elephants.
Got it. Okay. All right.
Anyway, so that was the first kid. And then I just threw up my hands. He thought he was a genius. I was like, you know what? Go for it. If you aren't going to take all my years of experience, go for it. The second kid, he became like my child. I got way too personally involved with him. He had absolutely the worst. He never even graduated from high school. He worked in a warehouse, but he had a brilliant story. He was Puerto Rican. It was a brilliant story. So the first thing I did was I helped him. He had like 15 characters. I got it down to 6 characters.
Good.
So that's another thing that all young writers do. And then we shaped and we shaped and we shaped and we shaped. And then I ended up having to spend hours fixing all his all his punctuation and spelling. And I even paid to get him final draft because I said, I just can't go through with this anymore. And God damn it, if that kid didn't rewrite it after all that. He did the same thing. I couldn't believe it. I spent hours and hours and hours with that kid. And you know what? This is another thing that's really important for new playwrights. Learn the difference between a play and a television show and a movie. They're different. Read plays, go to plays. You have to. You have to. You can't have 23 scenes in the first act of one page. That's what a lot of new writers do as well. So then I spent like so much time taking these 23 scenes and making them like into 2 scenes, yeah. I couldn't do it again. It was too much.
So what was the age, the age range?
Well, the last one was 35, but he was like a child.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. He worked in a warehouse, but he had this amazing story about a Puerto Rican boxer and that he was, they called him fake Shakespeare because he really wanted to be a writer and nobody knew about it. And it was kind of like Golden Boy, if you're familiar with that play at all. The closest thing I could think of, where he wanted to be a violinist, but everybody else wanted him to be a boxer. And the characters and everything, they were just fabulous. He was like such a raw talent. And I, of course, thought that, I could bring him to fruition. I mean, I sent his play out to a bunch of different places. Never heard from them, but whatever.
Yeah. For the ones that did follow the directions and didn't do any of the rewrites and they got their play read, what did they take away from that?
That's a good question. I mean, this guy wrote me this big long letter afterwards and said, he wished I was his mother and I'm the most important person who's ever been in his whole life, blah, 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 blah. Did he take away anything from it? Who knows? He never rewrote the play. He never did the rest of the work. And they were going to produce it at this lab theater school. They were going to produce it if he did the rewrite, and he never did it. And the other kid, I have no idea whatever happened to the other kid. He never thanked me. He never said, good luck,
Sure.
thank you, nothing. He was a kid. He was a college kid.
And the rest of the students, when they finished,
They weren't mine.
Oh, they were,
okay. They weren't mine.
Got it. Understood.
They were all assigned a mentor, and so that one summer I was one kid's and one summer I was the other. I don't know what happened with the other kids. Okay. I think some of them are still involved. It's called Lab Theater Project, and it's in Tampa, and it's fabulous. It's a wonderful place for beginning playwrights and developing playwrights. And, they only do new work. They only do new work, and they give it a great production, and they're just a pleasure to work with. They did one of my scripts, and I just loved working with them.
And that's still running? Oh,
yeah. Lab Theater in Tampa, Florida. And I can always, get you in touch with the artistic director.
Sure. Yeah. So where was I going with this? Is that an in-person workshop, or is it remote available? Is it available remotely as well?
It's available remotely. We actually did it. I did it did I do it the first year of COVID? I don't know, things were still COVID. And then when they did my play in August of 2021, and COVID was still pretty much around. Right. So I didn't go or anything, but he kept me in every day, on rehearsals, and, not like, not like this, but, he put the computer so I could see the stage and the actress and all that, and working with them was great. I was sad that I wasn't there, but what they do is they do a live production, and they also do an on-demand.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. With everything going on COVID-wise, in recovery, especially since we brought up Mark Taperform and the Center Theater Group, do you think that there will be a rebound? Do you think that where do you think the issue lies right now with the kind of the fall of theater in general? I guess.
I think they're doing plays that nobody wants to see. Sorry.
Does that go back to the political aspect that we discussed earlier?
Well, I don't want anybody coming after me.
Fair enough. We'll leave it at that. All right. No, I think that's, I think that's something to take into account. And
there was in the New York Times letters to the editor today. It was all in reaction to an article about a week ago about theaters in trouble and all that kind of thing. You probably saw it. Everybody was posting it on Facebook and everything. Go to thenewyork.com and read the letters to the editor today. And they were all about that.
Okay. I will take a look at that. And what I'll do on that note as well, unless it's subscription based, what I'll do is I'll try to find that exact article, and I'll post it in the show notes down below so everybody can go in and read that for themselves.
Someone asked me in an interview, what's the most challenging thing that you're facing today as a playwright? And I've made a career out of writing stories about other cultures that are so specific, they're universal. And that was my strong suit. And that's what I've always been known by. And I do an enormous amount of research. I do, I cast actors and a director who are part of that culture, and so they can weigh in on that and everything. And this is pretty much a lot of my career has been successfully done by that. I wrote a play in last spring called Masala Daba, which is an Indian spice box. And I have been to India a number of times, and it's about a South Indian family. Some are American, some, second generation. And it's been under the auspices of a South Asian director and South Asian actors. And we did workshops, and we were, developmental workshops. I knew the step in the Ganges that they dumped the ashes. I mean, I talked to someone at the beginning from the same town, and she said, you have 18 cultural inaccuracies my ingredients in the food or something like that. I fixed them all. I cannot get it done. It's being called cultural appropriation. And I said, so what are you telling me now? After all this, I can only write plays about white, middle-aged Jewish women who live on the west side of Los Angeles? That's the biggest challenge right now.
It is unfortunate because, I mean, even going to playwrights from whatever region you might be writing from, that's not to say that they're going to come up with that exact same story. And that's not to say that the story that you're telling isn't important. And I think that needs to be taken into account.
Well, that's exactly what the director says. And this is a director who is very seasoned director, and he works all the time in big regional theaters and everything. And that's what she said. She says, I get so many South Asian plays that, they don't know it. They don't know any more than you did when you started out. They're Indian American, and they don't know anything about it. They don't know anything.
Especially if they were Indian American, if they were American born and they've never been back to their homeland.
That's what she meant. Yes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you can always change your name and say that you're identifying as.
I thought about it. But then what happens when I come walking in? Actually, this is very funny. I wrote a play called, Closely Related Keys, the one that I had told you about. And I had interest in it from a Black theater company. And they said to me, God, we really liked your play. We'd like to get to know you. We're having a reading on Sunday night. Why don't you come to the reading? So I'm like, okay, I will. So I walked in the door and they looked at me. Who are you? I said, it's Wendy Graf. And they thought I was Black. Well, as it turned out, I went on, I worked with them. I love them. I've worked with them many times, but I mean, my stuff's specific.
Well, let me ask you that then, because that's you've juxtaposed something very, very interesting. And I'm wondering if this would be a different story if you were to go to a South Asian theater company.
They wouldn't even read it. I've been there. They won't even read it. Not even when the director sent it to them. We promote South Asian playwrights. They haven't been promoted enough. And I agree. I'm not saying they shouldn't have their opportunities. I'm not saying that at all.
No, I understand that.
They won't read it.
Well, I would love to ask what the answer is, but I'm afraid that The answer is time and the market. You know,
I don't know. I don't know. You know, it makes it very hard to like, you know, to sit here and go, oh, this is a really interesting story. Like I have like this huge box of like things that I've clipped or things that I've saved, you know, that I go, oh, that's kind of an interesting story. Maybe I can come up with something with that. And then I don't know, lately it just feels so fruitless. Like, oh, but this is going to have characters of other races or genders. And, you know, then I'm going to get cultural appropriation.
well, I think that, you know, it just, if there's not a lot of playwrights that fall into those categories, then I don't see what the purpose is, you know?
Well, they're encouraging them. They want young playwrights, and which is great. I mean, what they're doing is great.
Sure, if there are people out there that have that interest, but if they don't have that interest and that there are no stories coming in from that community, then but somebody else is representing them, whether or not it's of the right, quote unquote, community, then I don't know. It's just sad that there's representation in another way for these communities, and that's still not good enough.
And it's not, I mean, I guess it's not good enough that these are human stories. This could be about any family. It's just through the lens of this family.
Then rewrite it. Take all the identity stuff out and rewrite it and make it about the Jewish woman in the Palisades and you know.
That doesn't interest me.
I know it doesn't, but I mean, if that's the, you know, if you're getting held back based on, you know.
Well, you know what? It's like you started out asking me, like, you won the award in 2019. How come it took this long? That's what I'm hoping. I mean, I could even think about producing it myself, but I don't want all these people to weigh in and say cultural appropriation, you know? You know, the pendulum will swing back, and I think the opportunities that have been afforded marginalized groups, previously marginalized groups, I think it's wonderful.
Sure, 100%.
But I think let's think about the gestalt, you know? And, you know, then people say, oh, well, in a few years, the pendulum will swing back. And then I think, well, I'm not 25.
Sure.
You know, but we'll see.
Yeah, absolutely. Outside of exit wounds, because we know it's been done. What are you working on right now?
Well, I'm not really working on anything right now. I have one more play that was canceled during COVID. Again, it was supposed to world premiere in 2020, and it was canceled and the theater fell apart, which is really too bad because it was a wonderful theater and I had worked there before. But
Where was that at?
It was in Washington, D.C.
Okay.
I have a play, the last play, and I have interest in it in South Florida. They got a grant that was tied into the themes of the play. So hopefully it's going to go up at the first of the year.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
I hope so. On that note, though, in another aspect of failing theater, do you think that with all the closures that theaters they'll spring back, especially with the cost of real estate?
I think there will always be theater. There was theater in the Warsaw Ghetto. There was theater in the concentration camps. There was theater in ancient Rome. There will always be theater. It may not look like it has looked like in the past, but I mean, a lot, there's a lot of theaters that are thriving throughout the country. We're just talking about some of the big ones, and we're talking about New York, and we're talking about Looking Glass in Chicago, and we're talking about the Taper.
Well, I'm not even talking about the big ones. I'm even talking about, I'm in North Hollywood Arts District, and I don't think that they can even call it the North Hollywood Arts District anymore, because I would say a good half a dozen to a dozen theaters are gone.
Really? Because there's the road, and there's only one road. The road on Magnolia is still open, and that's only probably because of the attachment to the retirement home. Right.
But their Lancashire location closed. The Avery Shriver closed. Actors Workout Studio closed. Theater Unlimited closed. Secret Rose closed. I don't know if Two Roads on Tujunga in Tujunga Village is still there.
Do you think they closed because of COVID?
Yeah.
Did they close after COVID? And they just financed it?
It was COVID and just realist or landlord just saying they're going to raise the rent, or they didn't want it to be a theater anymore.
And what is it now?
Well, the Actors Workout Studio, where I produced a majority of my projects, became a dispensary for about a year and a half, and now it's vacant again.
Well, here's another problem. It's so much more expensive to produce stuff if you have equity actors now, because of what equity did. I think eliminating equity waiver. That's another thing. That was a really bad move. Early in my career, I self-produced 2 shows, and it wasn't that much.
No.
And I had equity actors and everything, and they were like, equity waiver,
Yeah. And from what I understand, that finally fell through the cracks, and it's no more from what I understand. But I'm right there with you, because the problem is with equity is that when you produce equity, it's not just that you have to pay the equity actors. If they're in either of the sister unions, whether that's SAG-AFTRA or AGVA, then you have to pay them as well. So I usually work with a cast of, anywhere from 10 to 12. And if you're talking minimum wage for rehearsals and then the production, my $5,000 budget has now become $20,000, and I got to charge $50 for a dinky little theater in North Hollywood that seats 36. I'm not going to fill any seats.
Yeah, that's been the problem. Yeah, it's a huge economic.
Yeah.
Equity really messed stuff up.
Well, the thing that really, really frustrated me about that is that their members voted against it. And Equity turned around and said, no, we know better than you do. We're going to put it through anyways. And then what's the point of having a vote if you're not going to respect it?
I know. Well, welcome to America.
Yeah. Well, But I'm hoping things spring back, but I just don't see new theaters popping up anywhere in the major hubs, if you will. They're going to be on the outskirts. They're going to be in, where theater isn't usually found, because the real estate's a little bit cheaper there, and so, fingers crossed. I don't know. I'm just hoping that it can spring back, and I'm hoping that, maybe the, whatever the local political aspect is will, subsidize theater again, theater to make it spring back up, and we can get back to where things used to be.
Well, that email that comes once a week, like NoHo News and everything.
Yeah.
it always seems like there's like 10 plays at least, and a whole bunch of plays going on.
That's not to say that theater's still not happening. It is, but I mean, like, there's still a couple spaces that are thriving, but I'm again around the corner from Theater 68 that was revived, and they really did a beautiful job on it. But $2,500 a weekend, I can't afford that for a 4-week run. I'm used to, like I got lucky. I was working at a place that was $675 a weekend, which was doable for me. I could at least hopefully break even.
A very good price.
It was a great price, and we made it work. But I mean, then even if I was at the complex, which in the complex in Hollywood is also, I was
just going to say, yeah.
They're still locked up. They're still boarded up, hoping that it becomes a historic landmark and they can reopen. But I could produce there for $1,000 a weekend, which is still, reasonable. But I don't know. I just hope that at least in LA theater bounces back.
Well,
you can be hopeful.
Maybe because of all the actors that are on strike right now, they'll say, you know what, let's do a play and we'll all pitch in and we'll all put the money in. But that's another thing. They, equity messed with that self-producing thing. And then you could only get like 12 performances or something. I don't know. It doesn't make any sense. It was that really screwed up small theater.
Yeah.
I think that screwed up small theater more than anything else did.
Yeah, there was something definitely behind it, that they were trying to cut out the smaller people, the smaller theaters and whatnot. Maybe it's just because they wanted their cut and they just found other actors going to all these places and doing free theater just to work, so they could work on their chops. Which is sad.
I mean, that's what theater is supposed to be. That's how I started, and that's how it's supposed to be.
I agree. We got to start somewhere. Yeah. And let's not end on a bummer note. So on that note, a couple things. Where can people find your work?
wendygraf.com. wendygraf.com.
Wonderful.
Is my website. It has all my plays, everything. And I'm also in NPX. If any, my plays are too, if anybody's interested in reading them. And if anybody wants to contact me, WGRAF89132@gmail.com. I'm always happy to talk to someone, and I've been doing this a long time, and no, I'm not on Broadway every week, but I think I have some good advice to give. Well, and I like to hear, I love working with these young people who are bringing like a whole new sensibility and stuff in it. Yeah.
Well, you gave an hour and a half of insightful information, so I know you got a lot more to give. If we would probably get to if we had even more time. And then the other
an hour and a half. Wow.
I know, right? Time flies. Are you on the socials? Is my final question for you.
What does that mean?
Social media, Facebook, Instagram.
Wendy Graf on Facebook.
Wendy Graf on Facebook. Okay, great.
Yeah, if you send me a friend request and I don't know who you are, I probably won't take it.
Fair enough. And are you on the Instagram or as the kids are calling it now, the X?
I am,
only known as Twitter.
I don't expect. No, I only am on it where I follow my children so I can see pictures of my grandchildren, and they don't want me to show any pictures of my grandchildren anywhere.
Fair enough. That's probably good.
So
probably
forget I'm on Instagram.
All right, fair enough. All right.
I'm on X.
All right, there you go. What's your X handle?
What is it? God, I never use it. At Wendy Graf, I think maybe.
There we go. Awesome. Well, Wendy Graf, thank you for coming on to the Playwright Spotlight.
Thank you. It's been fun. I was a little apprehensive, but
not at all. Thanks again for coming on.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of Playwright Spotlight. Again, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment down below, and share this channel with a friend. If you're listening to this on your favorite podcast platform, be sure to leave a 5-star review and subscribe to the channel. And in the meantime, and until we see each other again, keep writing.